Hello, this is Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt of the Christ School of Theology. And I'm here with you today as part of a course called Faith, Reason, and Knowledge that deals with the philosophical underpinnings of theological thinking in the Western theological tradition. Today, I have the pleasure to talk to you about Duns Scotus. Now, Duns Scotus, of course, is a very, very important figure. I'll put the name on the board. Duns Scotus. There you go, Duns Scotus. Duns Scotus is a very important figure. He was born in 1266, lived to 1308. And by the 14th century, the term via antiqua, you haven't seen these terms before, you should see them now. The via antiqua and the via moderna. The via antiqua will refer to Duns Scotus and his predecessors, and the via moderna will refer to William of Ockham, who I'll talk about later, and his successors. He is known as the Doctor Subtilis, because his thought was, you guessed it, very subtle, right? Very complicated. He denies, Scotus does, the illumination theory of Augustine and Bonaventure and even Aquinas. He believes that ens, which is the Latin for a being, ens, is the most abstract and empty of concepts, and it is the ultimate generalization formed by abstracting from all particular content. We talked last time, or a couple times ago, about Aquinas and how ens was a finitization of esse. And so there was still something of the to be-ness in ens for Aquinas, because there was a finitization of to be-ness, gave a particular being. In Scotus, this changes, ens becomes the most general and abstract of all concepts. So I'm giving you a few just general remarks at the beginning here, and I'm going to go into this in more detail. So ens abstracts even from existence, for some beings exist and some do not, right? Some beings exist and some do not. And so Scotus is able to talk about beings that do not exist. With our good friend Scotus, notions of illumination and participation wane, and general notions become thought about in different ways, more as classificatory. And we'll talk about all of this in more detail later. He distinguishes the potentia de absoluta. Here we go. I still got room. Potentia de absoluta from the potentia de ordinata. And the potentia de absoluta is the unconditioned power of God, and the potentia de ordinata is the ordained or limited power of God. He believed that God had power to do anything, but that God, and this is his absolute power, but that God had decided, or covenanted, if you will, promised to deal with human beings in certain ways. And so out of this great infinity of all those things God could have done, God has decided to do certain things and relate to us in certain ways. We will talk about this later as well. Scotus keeps high company. He ranks as one of the big four of high scholasticism, with Bonaventure, whom we didn't talk about too much in this course. But certainly we did talk about Aquinas, and we will talk about Occam. So with Bonaventure, Aquinas, and Occam. While Aquinas is the Doctor Angelicus, I didn't talk about that a lot, but in Aquinas' work in the Summa Theologica, he certainly has a great deal to say about angels, right? And he said so many things about angels, about their nature and how they are individuated with respect to each other, that earned him the name of the Doctor Angelicus. Scotus, however, of course, is the Doctor Subtilis, right? He was a Franciscan friar, a philosopher of great renown, actually, and a theologian. He was born near the Scottish border of England, Duns, right? And he became a priest on March 17th, 1291. So we just celebrated that here a month or so ago, the anniversary of when Duns Scotus became a priest. He completed his studies in Oxford in 1301. Remember, he was born in 1266. He lectured at Paris. He also lectured in Cambridge. He was at the Franciscan House of Studies in Cologne when he died in 1308, much too early. Fabulous mind. John Paul II proclaimed his the beatification, there we go, get it out of my mouth here today, in 1993. He's traditionally thought to have written a number of works, which now we think maybe some of these he didn't write, so it's now a very big problem in Scotus scholarship to untangle which works are ultimately Scotus's and which are not. And years ago when I was reading Charles Sanders Peirce, the American philosopher, I used to like to read Peirce a lot, actually. He had so much to say about Scotus. He was so excited about Scotus, but of course he was reading texts that Scotus never wrote. But in those days we thought that he had. Scotus wrote on Porphyry's Isagoga. Some of you are perhaps not having that on your computers, but you can go up to the Logic Museum on your iPad and have always open the Isagoga, right? Then you can think about this all the time. Porphyry's Isagoga, Aristotle's categories, Aristotle on interpretation, Aristotle's sophistical refutations, Aristotle's metaphysics, and on the soul or de anima. So he lectured on Aristotle, also on Porphyry's Isagoga. He lectured on Lombard's sentences, and he produced his own Ordinatio. It's a famous work by him. He wrote his Quod Libet Questiones, and you're all familiar now because you've had this course, right? So all of you know that that means whatever. Questions on whatever, right? His Quod Libet Questiones, his Reportatio, his work that he worked on at the end of his life, De Primo Principio, on the first principle. And then, of course, he had his Theoremata, and there's still controversy about whether or not this is an authentic work of Scotus's. So there's a little intro here, a little bit of intro to his life, a little bit to his works. This is Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt of the Christ School of Theology here at the Institute of Lutheran Theology, and I'll be back with you soon. Thank you very much.